downloadables, printables, printed inserts that you print yourself. I mean, what an amazing way to fully customize your planner to be exactly how you need it. You don't have all of that waste if you buy a whole bunch of inserts that aren't quite right, and now you've got all of this inventory that you've either got to store or sell. They're reasonably inexpensive, so you can try something out, and if it's not quite right, well, you haven't wasted a whole ton of money and a whole ton of paper. So printed inserts are amazing, but the problem with printed inserts is you got to print them yourself, and that's kind of where the problem starts sometimes. Hey there, Planner fam! Welcome to my YouTube channel, Planning with Chloe. I'm your host, Chloe, and I'm also the owner and creator behind Keshinomi. And in today's episode, I want to share a little bit about my experience of printing out my own inserts and what I've learned. So I think the first question that I had when I decided to go down the route of having a ring-bound planner and customizing it with my own inserts was, what do I print it on? Like, what paper do I use? Of course I had, and I'm looking this way because we're currently in my home office and my rack of papers is just over there. And over there I've got copier paper, which is in the UK we weigh things by GSM, and it's 90 GSM paper, which I think for the States might be something like £22 paper, I'm not sure. But 90 GSM paper is kind of budget paper. And the paper that I have was definitely budget, kind of copier, inkjet paper. Not that great to write on, if I'm honest. Had a bit of a slightly rough texture that meant a biro or a gel pen wouldn't flow nicely over the paper. And also, you know, 90 GSM is kind of thin. It's light on the ground, and I knew that there would be shadowing from printing the inserts on both sides, and they'd probably be shadowing from the pen that I use, or I'd have to be very careful about what kind of pens I use, or maybe not print my inserts at 100% black, maybe go for a grey or something. So I knew that there were going to be some hurdles if I just used the bog standard paper, and I did do a few test printouts and was like, yeah, this will do for now, but this won't do forever. Like, I want my planner to be this dream, this thing that I absolutely adore using, and if it's got scratchy paper that's kind of a bit see-through, that's going to kill the buzz a little bit. So I knew I needed to get the paper thing sorted out. And I think it's a question that we all have when we decide that actually printables seems like a really cost-effective way of customizing my planner and testing things out. But okay, how do I print this? What paper do I print it on? So I did a little bit of research and I discovered some papers for my brand of printer, and that would probably be my first top tip. Whatever make of printer you have, see what papers that company produces for their printer. I just find that when I use the papers that are specifically designed for my printer, I get the best results. I have a Canon, again, I'm looking this way, my printer's over there. I have a Canon IP8750. It's a photo quality printer. I would say it's semi-pro home use. It's definitely a home printer. It's not a professional printer, but it's more on the higher end of home printers. I think at the time when I bought it with the ink cartridges, and I think it takes 5 or 6 ink cartridges. It takes 6 ink cartridges because it has an extra black and it has a grey. I think with the ink cartridges it came to about £400, which is a lot for a home use printer. So it's definitely getting into the top end of home printers, and it's amazing quality. So I knew I only put genuine ink in my printer, so I probably want to stick with using genuine paper for my printer. Not that paper isn't genuine, that kind of doesn't make sense, but you know what I mean. I wanted to use the branded paper for my printer because I've always get better results with it. So it began a journey of, okay, well, where do I begin? Let's go to Amazon, let's see what I can find. And I found a couple of different papers that Canon did, part of their premium range of papers. So I ordered in one pack, which was 100 GSM, because I knew 90 GSM was a bit too thin. So I wanted to try the 100 GSM, and the paper, when it came, oh my goodness, gorgeous paper, bright white, super smooth, the right kind of weight, but still a little bit of shadowing. So I decided to spend a little bit more money and get the 120 GSM paper. And I'd have to say that my happy place is probably 120 GSM paper. So it's the same paper, just the next weight up. Now, the problem with that is the heavier the weight of paper, the thicker the paper is, the quicker it's going to bulk out your planner. But I knew that the way in which I was using my planner at the time and the size of rings in my planner, that I could accommodate that and it not be too much of a burden. So I actually use a combination of the 120 and the 100 GSM papers, which I think for the US, the 120 is probably about £32 paper, and the 100 GSM I think is probably, I want to say £26 paper for the States. Don't quote me on that. I think that's right. So I use a combination of the two. I use the 120 GSM for things that I know are going to be staying in my planner for a long time. So there might be projects where, project inserts that I know are going to be in there for a while because there's a few steps to that project, so I might print that on heavier paper. My monthly inserts, because I like to keep those in there so I have a record of different things that have happened in case I need to look back and say, oh, when did I last do such and such or see so and so or whatever it is. I tend to print that on the heavier weight paper. And then for my weekly inserts, or things that aren't going to be staying in my planner for very long, or where I know I'm going to have a lot of them, like the weekly inserts. I don't do dailies, but if I did do dailies, I would also do them on the lighter weight of paper so that my planner doesn't get too bulked out too quickly. So yes, my first thing that I've learned from printing my own inserts is you've just got to try something out. Do some research, ask some other people, watch different YouTube channels of what people are using, and then make an informed decision to try something out, and accept that it may not be for you, but you may figure out another way that you can use that paper. So don't be afraid to just invest in a pack of paper and see how it goes. The next thing that I think was something else I had to learn when it came to printing my own inserts is what size am I going to go for? My planner, thankfully, was an A5, or is, it's not what, I'm still in my A5 planner, and for me I think that's brilliant. Here in the UK our standard paper size is A4. That's widely available. It's what most documents are printed on, what most letters are printed on, so it's very easily available, and the Filofax A5 size planner is just half of A4. So I was quite happy to buy a pack of A4 size paper, chop it down in half, and thank you very much, I've got my A5 size paper. But if you're in the US, your standard size paper isn't A4, it's a letter size, which from memory I think it's slightly wider and slightly shorter than A4. So you're probably going to get a little bit of waste. No, you're going to get a lot of waste, let's be real. For my A4 sheet of paper I can print 2 A5 inserts, whereas if I was in the States on the letter size paper, I would have to print my A5 insert in the middle of the page and chop it down, so I'm going to have a lot of waste, and that is a bit of a problem. But I have discovered that you can buy packs of pre-cut, pre-punched A5 size paper. Now, the only reason why I didn't go down that route was because I really wanted a quality paper, and I knew that I could buy a quality A4 size paper and just trim it down to size. But I would definitely say if that wasn't available to me, then I would consider buying pre-cut, pre-punched paper, because it just eliminates all of that waste and having to get a guillotine and having to have a hole punch and all of that kind of stuff. So if you're not too precious about how bright white the paper is, or how smooth the paper is, or how thick the paper is, then you can certainly buy pre-cut, pre-punched paper. The next thing is the printer. Obviously, you need to have a fairly good printer. Like I said, I've got it's a semi-pro home professional use photographic printer. It gives great results. One of the ink cartridges is a permanent black ink cartridge, which is great for in planners, especially if you're using highlighters. I still do get a little bit of a smudge with some of the highlighters, my mild liners. The yellow one seems to smudge the printer ink. The other two colours, I've got a blue and a pink, and they're fine. So I would say that with some highlighters, you are going to get ink smudges. And that's even me using the genuine ink cartridges that go with my printer, trying to make sure that it's using the permanent black ink cartridge, you're still going to get some smudging. And I think that's just one of the things with highlighters, especially if they're alcohol based, you are going to get the print out, the ink being smudged. So that's just something else to bear in mind. But yes, going back to the printer, you do want to make sure you've got a reliable printer and that you've got a stock of ink cartridges, which this can be another thing that for me, for my business, it's not so much of a problem, because I always have ink cartridges in stock, because it's part of my business to be printing things out. So my printer is never without ink cartridges. But if you are going to be printing your own inserts, it's another thing that you've got to consider, having enough ink cartridges for your printer, as well as having enough paper to hand. And then considering, you know, do you want to spend not so much and just get a cheap-ish printer? How reliable is it going to be? Are the printouts going to be very good quality? Are you going to be using genuine ink? There's like a lot more to start considering. If, like me, you run a business where you do have a printer that is that you have to maintain, you have to use genuine ink, you have to keep a stock of ink, it's a higher end printer, then that's not so much of a problem. And it certainly wasn't for me, which I think is probably one of the reasons why I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go for it and design and print my own inserts. Now, the trimming, I know I've touched on this earlier when I was talking about my A5 size planner, but trimming planner inserts, I do have, I don't have it to hand, but I do have a couple of personal size planners, just because I wanted to try it out. It's like A5 is quite a popular size, and then personal is like a very popular size of planner. And for me, we're a family of 5. I have 3 young kids. One of them is now in secondary school, she's 11, but the other 2 are still in primary, they're 6 and 8. So there's a lot of stuff flying around that I've got to keep a track of in terms of what they've got going on inside of school and outside of school. So I knew that a personal size planner probably wasn't going to be quite right for me, but I wanted to test it out. And yeah, it's not for me for my everyday planning, but I have repurposed it for something else, which means I've had to print out inserts for it. And trimming down inserts, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying, if you're in the States using an A5 size planner and you're printing your own inserts onto letter size paper, that you have to print it out in the middle and trim it down to the size. It adds to the stuff that you've got to do. I have to say that I try and do a big batch of inserts for my personal size planner, and then it runs out and I'm like, ugh, like I can't use it in the way that I want. So I'm now going back to my phone and doing notes. So it does take a lot of organisation if you are going to be printing out inserts and having to top it up. For some reason, it doesn't seem to be as big a deal for my A5 size planner, and I don't know if that's because it is just a case of chopping the A4 sheet in half. Like literally I can pop it in my guillotine and chop it to size. I haven't got to do all of this like trim here, trim here, trim here, but I will share at the end, I will share a quick tip of how I now print it, because I was using a guillotine, but I actually think this new way that I'm doing it is probably a bit better, so I will share that at the end. Another thing that I've learned from printing my inserts, you have to have a lot of tools, and I have done another video where I show the printer that I use and the paper and my guillotine and all of the other bits, but you have to have things like hole punches, you have to have a stock of blades for your like rotary blades, or for your trimmer if that takes blades. You have to have all of this extra stuff on hand. So although it does seem like a great way to save money and have less inventory in terms of paper, stationery, you still got to have paper, because you need paper to print stuff on. You need a printer, you need ink cartridges, you need a guillotine or a cutting mat and a rotary blade, and you need a punch and like all of these things. So, but you do get to completely customize your planner to meet your specific needs with exactly the things that you need in there. So what I've learned from printing my own inserts is I'm still going to do it, because I want my planner to be 100% customized to my needs. I know that if I have a planner that someone else has put together with what they think, like a perfect bound planner, which I did try for 2 years to make work and it just didn't, I know that I'm not going to stick to my planner habit, because I'm trying to shoehorn what I need my planner to do into something that's not really fit for purpose. So I am going to continue printing my own inserts, because the having the inventory of a printer, a stapler, not a stapler, a hole punch, a guillotine and all of those things, I had all of those things except for the hole punch. I didn't have a hole punch for a 6-ring planner, or if you go disc bound, you need to have a very specific hole punch for that. So that was the only extra thing that I needed to buy in order to do my own inserts. But for me, that was like a no-brainer. Like it was just one extra thing that I needed. I had everything else. I had the great printer, I had stocks of ink cartridges, oh, and I had to figure out the paper. But once I figured that out, like the pack that I bought back in November 2021, that is still going strong. So yeah, for me it's been totally worth it. But I would say, unless you do work from home, you run your business from home and you've got a lot of this equipment to hand, or you're a very crafty person that has a lot of stationery stuff to hand and has a lot of these things already, then I would say I'm not sure whether the benefits would outweigh the negatives of the things that you need in terms of printing your own inserts. So like I said, I will share how I trim my personal size inserts, because I just personally, I feel it's better. So let's go over to my cutting table. So here we are in my little area in my office where I trim down my paper. It's also my packing area where I pack up my orders. But here is where I do my trimming, and I am fortunate enough that I can fit 3 sheets of personal size inserts onto 1 sheet of A4. Like how awesome is that? So I'm getting the most bang for my buck with this. Now, I originally was using my guillotine. So I have a guillotine, but it also has a rotary blade, which I can lift up and place into the right position. So I was using this to trim my inserts down, and I've posted about how I cut that in a previous video, which I will link to at the end. But I've switched to using this method because I think it is far better. So I need a cutting mat, or you will need a cutting mat. I already had this in my kit. I already had a metal ruler, which is something else you will need, and a rotary blade. This is a game changer. A rotary blade is my #1 top tip, because what I think happens with, I think there's a Fiskars paper trimmer where you drag the blade along. Now, when that blade is dull, you are more likely to tear your paper because you're dragging the blade through the paper. With a rotary blade, you are rolling the blade through the paper. So if the blade is beginning to get dull, rather than tearing the paper, it just won't cut through. So you'll find that you'll have to push down harder to cut through the paper, but you won't tear it. Now that is a game changer. And by using this with the metal ruler, it just makes it a lot easier when it comes to trimming, because you just can't show you because I'm holding the camera, so I won't actually cut through this, but you just line up your metal ruler and you start close to the top, but not cut from, like, literally from the edge to the edge of the paper, but you just start close to the top, cut to your trim marks, and then stop. Don't cut fully all the way to the edges still. And that just means you've still got all of your cutting guides, especially when we're talking about this end where you need to keep this little strip of paper intact because your horizontal cutting line is there. You want to have that there. When you cut the paper that way, it just makes life so much easier. And as I said, a rotary blade is far superior to a blade that you're going to literally drag through. Something like this is the other alternative, and one of these you are dragging it through the paper, so it will tear. But this never tears the paper, in my experience, and I haven't changed this blade yet. It does need changing because it is struggling to cut through thicker paper, but it's not tearing it, and that's the main thing. Thanks for watching today's video. I hope you found that information useful and helpful for your planner journey. If it has been of use, do give me a thumbs up, because that really helps me to know that what I'm putting out is relevant to other people on a similar kind of journey. And consider subscribing, because I'm going to be sharing more of what I've learned and the changes that I've made as I continue on my own planner journey. Until next time, Mama, bye for now. Bye, 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 bye.